Roces are a pivotal brand in inline skating, known for creating one of the most recognisable and widely used skate shells in history that most people would refer to as the iconic Majestic 12 or M12 for short. Since the 90s, some of the biggest names in aggressive inline skating have had their feet in these things and produced some incredible moments. The M12 has been the tool used in cultural defining movements and eras. They tried a couple of different things over the years, been through highs, had some fairly bad lows, and despite the shell originally being created in the 70s, they're still using it today. So did they just pop the 8 ball off the break and they don't really need to do much more? Or is it just cowardice, greed and laziness and they really need to pull their finger out and create a whole new skate? We're going to discuss it all and find out. All the stunts are performed by professionals. Don't attempt this yourself. Reversing back to the 90s, rollerblading was kicking off. Roces was a well-known key player and the M12 was an extremely sought after skate. Beautiful. The team had the biggest and brightest names of the era: Jon Julio, Arlo Eisenberg, Rivera, Randy Spizer, Everett, and loads more, all doing a pretty standout job of promoting the brand and the skate, to the point it became iconic.
I know I'm going to land and I know that I'm going to be safe because my skate is not going to break, you know? My skate it's meant not to break, so it's just not going to break.
Fast forward to now and they're still using that shell. So it's not too surprising when they put out a new iteration of it. People always moan that it's just a new colourway and they need to do more, and you get comments like, how about Roces tries updating their product, maybe even once in 30 years? How lazy or lacking in imagination do you have to be to still use the same boot mould as the early 90s? They could update the sole plate or change the colours as much as they want. It doesn't make the boot / shell any less ugly. And you've also got things like, yeah, I got to agree, Roces needs to invest in some new moulds. No hate on Roces, but with all the innovation over the last 5 years especially, it's time to take a risk. Well, so it seems that the first person just wants a better looking skate aesthetically for their preferences, which is totally fine. If you think the skate is ugly and you want them to make it prettier, yeah, sound. But it's kind of rare you hear people say the M12 is ugly. Like, a lot of people really love the look of that skate, and I think a big part of the reason why they're still using it is because aesthetically it's simple, it's unoffensive, it's quite a timeless design, plus it does the job well. But outside of that, and where Roces are right now, do they really need to do more? Like, rollerblading is pretty niche and has been for a long time. So is the right move taking a risk on something new? Back to this line, how about Roces tries updating their product maybe even once in 30 years? Well, I mean, they have done a couple of times actually, but let's go back through the history of the shell and the things they've tried to do. So the shell is based off their ice skating boot from the 70s. This was then adapted for their first ever inline skate in the 80s, which they called the Pro. And actually, around the same time, they were making skates for rollerblade. The shell became more recognisable from the 90s, where you had the Roces Roams, then the Roces Moscow ramps. Technically, the first skate designed for aggressive inline skating, beating the rollerblade Tarmac CE, although that had a bigger cultural impact.
And finally, the skate is ready to meet any challenge, from the air or from the street.
We got Roces Streets in 1995 and a prototype M12 the same year, with it officially coming out the next year in 1996, and it became a hit. So right now they're still selling the M12. 30 years after the M12 prototype, 44 years after entering inline skating, and 47 years after it was used for an ice skate. Pretty fucking long. So there must be something about this shell that works. Saying that, they do have other skates and did try other skates as well. They had the fifth element released in 1998, which they're still using today. They actually had a fifth element solely for female skaters. Like, the skate was going to feature a new liner tailored specifically for women's foot shapes, but it never got a full release. The Roces Khuti from 2000, named after the Great Pyramid of Giza, and from my personal point of view, those skates should have been buried in a tomb in the desert as well. If the Egyptian god Anubis would have weighed them against a feather of Ma'at to see if they were worthy, they would have been banned from entering the afterlife, devoured by the demoness Ammit, and sent to oblivion for their life filled with sin. You had the Graals and the 5K skates, both originally released around 2002, where they actually introduced new tech as well. Biomex, a patented cuff construction with offset cuff bolts. The idea behind the Biomex technology was that it follows the more natural movements of your knees and ankles, which in turn was meant to improve performance and comfort. And from all accounts, these skates were really comfortable and quite a delight to wear, if you didn't mind your skates looking like they had a corset rammed into orthopedic boots and you just stuck some wheels on the bottom of them. Despite the innovative tech, they just didn't sell well.
I think they thought they designed something really sick and they were just like confused why it wasn't selling. You know what I mean?
No
like,
way,
put all this money in it. It must be our fucking marketing is wrong over here at Roces, but
yeah.
From 2000 to 2008, you got the Element 50 and the Element 52, originally introduced as a budget skate, but again, they didn't make much of an impact. So clearly, they've tried a few different things, they've introduced new tech, but every time they took a risk, it didn't really pay off for them. And you had that M12 shell sitting there on the shelf, looking at them, winking, going, come on boys, get me back out there. And they always went back to it because it was so hard to beat. Just a quick break to say thank you to my Patreons and channel members. Simply couldn't do this without your support. If you would like to join them, hop on over to the Patreon, exclusive videos, all that kind of good stuff. Same with the channel membership. Also currently running the Community Cup Invitational. 8 of the best skaters from 2024 in an edit competition, trying to raise money for the prize pot. 50% of what is raised will be split equally between the skaters as a base rate for taking part. So they are getting paid, then the rest goes on prizes. We've hit our second target of 6k and now we're going for 6.5k. Any support will be greatly appreciated. Now the M12 you see people skating around with at the moment is not the same M12 from 1996. It's had a few additions. The memory buckle that everyone loves turned up in the 2000. They switched to UFS in 2004. They made a cuff a more reasonable height so it wasn't tickling the back of your knee pit. They changed the plastic that they used to bio-based high-grade polyurethane using a lot of recycled materials, which considering how much plastic the rollerblading industry uses, probably a pretty decent move in terms of looking after the planet. They've had a couple of versions of their own premium liners, and I think improving comfort should be one of the main considerations with rollerblades.
It's beautiful.
They made a new frame, but the other one was tragic. And the biggest move, a wider sole plate answering the demands of customers and appeasing a lot of old knees.
The iconic and much loved model has gotten even better now with a whole new redesigned sole plate, which offers extra 5mm both on the inside and outside of the plate, which means staying more locked in at all times.
The irony being, it's probably a bunch of 40-year-olds asking Roces to change up the 30-year-old M12, but they'd be the last person to do anything about their own health and help out their 40-year-old knees. Either way they've updated the skate, it's still popular, it still works. Clearly, you can do mad tricks on it if you're good enough, but people still expect them to offer something more. Back to this comment, no hate on Roces, but with all the innovation over the last 5 years especially, it's time to take a risk. A totally reasonable comment. Take them skates for example though, probably one of the most popular brands at the moment. The skate is great, especially for me personally, but no offence to the brand, I don't think it's down to a highly innovative shell design. It's no secret Roces have had some pretty tough times. Like, they seem to be losing profits year on year, and of course they recently sold for a lot less than they originally wanted, so maybe you could argue that was due to lack of innovation, but actually I think it's probably more down to like a struggling industry which affects everybody, but then also, and probably more of a thing, marketing.
Handmade in Italy, hand stolen in Stepney. It's as long as my arm, I wish it was as long as something else.
Back to the old 90s again, the M12 with that team, absolutely shit hot. Despite rollerblading being in its infancy, certainly tech-wise, the skate did the job, like, and was popular. I mean, there was tricks invented in that shell. 2003, they get Julio on the blower and ask him to be captain of a sub-brand. He took the job and named it Valo after his dad. The skate was built around the M12 shell, but with a skin over it and a different sole that Julio had designed. Wildly, Roces was trying to push the Graal for the Valo, but luckily Eric Bailey was on hand.
I truly feel like I am the reason why it became the M12, because they were really trying to push the Graal. Like, how can we rework this fucking Graal piece of shit?
They try to revive that skate? No way. So you were the one who said M12 instead of the Graal?
Yeah, totally. I was just like, dude, the Graal fucking sucks.
The Graal fucking sucks.
Mate, I don't think rollerblading would have ever recovered if Valo used the Graal.
What a monster.
What is that?
They're the prototypes in 2003, and by 2004 the brand was launched. It became ridiculously popular, but we'll come back to that. 2005, 2006, Face to Music, Road to Nowhere, Meantime era was a pivotal moment in rollerblading. It showed a big change in some people's approach to skating, style of skating, fashion, and a lot of the names that were driving forces behind this were riding the Roces M12. It was a bit of a revival for Roces, and specifically the M12. The skate was now UFS, it had that great buckle, had a better cuff, but essentially it was the same shell from the 90s. It was the skaters and everything they brought to rollerblading that made it cool, but also the skate was functional. So now touching on how a struggling industry and essentially bad marketing had an impact. Roces had seen the drop off in popularity of the industry and decided to drop the whole Roces team. Controversially, I believe it came just before the Face to Music video was released. They wanted to focus on the more profitable Valo, and they knew that Jon's status in the industry would see them get way more support that way than they could do with Roces, but it was still their product getting sold. Brosco then joining Valo from the redundant Roces team was a huge moment, and they just kept growing. They had an enormous impact, and it wasn't too long before they were the most popular brand due to Julio's genius as a marketer and their outrageous team. Everything that was done on those skates was done on an M12 shell, bar the Valo Light, another shell they tried, but it didn't quite have the same impact.
We designed a brand new carbon shell. Within our mold, we added 5 meters in width and 5 meters in length. Look out for the new Valo lights at your favorite skate shop.
As an example of the appeal of that M12 silhouette, by 2013, as styles were changing, they got rid of the skin and released the V13, an M12 shell with an M12 sole plate and a V13 logo. These actually became their #1 sellers, suggesting the shell was pretty timeless. Until about 2016, 2017, it felt like they had a monopoly on the market. Everyone was in those skates. All the while, Roces were still actually selling a basic M12 and at a fraction of the cost of a Valo. Now allegedly, they started looking at this and thinking, the only difference here is the logo. We could shift these skates, all he's doing is putting different colours of them. Do we even need Jon? Completely overlooking and forgetting why they brought Jon in the first place. It was his credibility and iconic status, plus a head for marketing that was really shifting these things. They purposely projected a low budget for the upcoming year to make it pretty much impossible for Jon to actually work with. He wouldn't have been able to pay the riders, he wouldn't have been able to pay himself, he wouldn't have been able to go on tour, which was so successful for them. And also, as a father and husband, it just wasn't going to be a sensible decision, so essentially forced him to leave.
Got to a point in my life where I was just like, hey, I either got to figure something out elsewhere, or continue down this road where I wasn't feeling, I was feeling unstable. Is either stay in the business basically and try to figure something out, or get a job, or do both, do Valo and get a job, but continue to go down this road in this business relationship that wasn't healthy, you know what I mean?
They assumed it would look better for them if it looked like Jon just quit, rather than them being like, hey mate, you're out of here. I believe it's people's allegiances to Jon and what he means to rollerblading that caused a drop in favour and profit for Roces. In 2017 they were valued at 15 million euros. By 2020 it was 8.3 million, and they were actively trying to sell the brand at this point. They ended up selling it for 3.3 million at the end of 2023. During this time they'd started to rebuild their team. They had quality skaters, and clearly the M12 skate was working for them, but it just didn't feel like Roces were a top 3 brand. When given their time in the industry, they really should have been, and I don't think it's anything to do with the skate, but more so a lack of cohesion, no sense of direction with the marketing, outside of social media pics for product teasers and releases. There was a few misses aesthetics wise, skate colorways that looked like previous ones put out with Jon and Valo, and ones that looked similar to what Jon was doing now with them skates. And that's regardless of the logic that these colors were probably picked a year in advance, so they hadn't copied what's seen. But it was also just a sign of people's loyalty to Julio and Roces were never going to win that. Adding more fuel to that fire, returning to the skinned M12 originally introduced under Jon and Valo.
People keep on saying that, why is Roces copying the Valo, or why did Roces have to bring back Valo?
But as always, nothing wrong with the skate. It's interesting that Bobby Spazov's simple, less brash M12s were his most popular skates, in a similar way that the V13 was the most popular skate for Valo over the skinned ones. Although the skinned Valos were way better than the Dogmas, come on. It also didn't help that the team manager, creative head at the time, was having spats with potential customers on social media, bending the truth about being sold, giving questionable answers about the lack of female representation on Roces.
We never had a woman ask to be in the team. That's like the straight up true.
Hang about. I want to have a pro Roces skate. Fabiola da Silva. Alleged inappropriate relationships with team riders.
She was like manipulating me to believe things that wasn't real. Like she was threatening with kicking me out because I didn't answer messages from her at like 1 a.m. on a Friday night about nothing to do with skating.
Great skaters are leaving the brand because things didn't seem quite right. Most notably Joe Atkinson, who was their star skater at the time and on the absolute tear. Plus riders making really poor decisions and alienating themselves. It all just made Roces seem like a bit of a mess. Things did improve with the more frequent team videos and it gave a sense of more cohesion, but I feel like it's really stepped up since Martina's been sacked. It seems the money that was used to pay her has now been allocated to skater projects. Stuff like Soul, which was driven by Bobby in collaboration between his brand Inferno and Neil's brand's Magic Boots, and also Yuto was in the video as well. It feels like the skaters are now more in control of that brand. I mean, I could just be making this up in my head, but it seems like there's an actual bit of direction and cohesion in what they're doing, which builds confidence in the brands, and maybe they're even now a top 3 brand. Now, I'm not saying it's the best skate in the world, but it is solid. It stood the test of time. You can do all the tricks you like, if you're good enough. If you market it well, it sells and is popular. And I think the times it's been less popular has nothing to do with poor design, lack of functionality, or like wildly better options. It's just marketing. Faction and Standard are some of the newest names on the block who offer great skates functionally and aesthetically and offer a different fit, but are they selling more than the M12? If Roces did take a risk, they would surely be going into it knowing they're probably not going to beat the M12. In their words, it's the most produced inline shell ever. An out and out timeless classic.
They've made 7 million of these boot molds over the years. It's because they've made quad skates and ice skates and aggressive skates and a ton of other stuff. But they've made 7 million of those. It's got to be the most produced skate ever made.
The M12 has an unmatched history. It's been the skate used in countless incredible moments. It was the go-to skate in pivotal moments. It was the skate used in eras that defined rollerblading. It's simple. The aesthetics are clean and timeless.
It's lightweight, very responsive. I really like it this way.
The fact that people are still using it is an insane nod to how much Roces actually nailed it.
This is the most essential part of the Roces packaging, the toilet paper. Because once you see the skate, you shit your pants.
It is, however, a narrow skate, so you could catch a few more customers if you had a wider skate, but that was sort of what the fifth was meant to do. So is it really worth the investment right now when it's new owners, they've taken over it and got it for a price because it was dropping in value, and it's a very volatile industry? I don't think right now that they need to or should, but if for some reason the industry really started to pick up, I think the first step would be to go after individual sizes, more sizes, but still sticking with the M12, making it wider, but again, still sticking pretty much with that M12 shell. They've made wider sole plates, maybe experiment with the groove, because I assume that's cheaper than creating a whole shell. Go for cuff bolts over rivets. I know that's like fractionally more expensive, but it opens up customization. I'd honestly prefer it if they just re-released this boot. It's not just Roces that get comments like this. Like any brand that's been using a shell for a while, releasing different colorways, will get comments, like snidey comments, like, oh, it's just new color tech, or remarks and questions saying like, what's new? I get pushing for better fit and comfort, and that should be the main driving force with improvements. But I think people demanding new stuff all the time need to have a look at the reality of how small rollerblading is. I believe the obsession with new tech is pretty unnecessary, actually. And like, is there any skates out there that you can't do certain tricks with and they need to change? Like, I think if there was, they just wouldn't sell at all. But like, I feel like a lot of it is driven by people who are either, you know, just bored with what they're looking at and want to see something new, or they're getting older and they just want tricks to be easier and less effort, which I get. You want to have fun, but isn't like a big part of like rollerblading and how we measure how good people are is that it's meant to be a challenge. What do you think? Do Roces really need to come out with a new skate, or is it not really the right time? Spotty Dog.